Hello, I'm Bill O'Donnell, and welcome to part 2 of our talk with Karima Alavi, who is the teacher trainer program director at Dar es Salaam in Abiquiu, New Mexico. Welcome back, Karima. In the last segment last week, we got to know Karima about her life growing up as a Protestant girl in Cleveland, Ohio, that's right. And then her experiences in life that led her to the mosque in Abiquiu, and where she, just through her own discernment, was led to become a Muslim. And we're thankful that you're here to share more of that. When I heard about the teacher training program at Dar es Salaam, I was fascinated. A good friend of mine, Ron Stacy, who is a religion ed teacher back in Maryland, I think, or Delaware, back east, and who'd come out for this program, and I thought, well, this is fabulous. This really shows good sense, because today in the newspapers and television, we're just inundated with all this negative projection about Islam. And I don't know if it's a fair statement, but I heard it said once where Muslim fundamentalist extremists are to Islam as like the Ku Klux Klan is to Christianity. And it may not be entirely accurate, and my apologies to all you Klan members and extremists out there, but in any case, it gives some sense. It does not give what this book teaches and what the premise of Islam is, and that's what we want to cover today. And also, you mentioned that your study of the Bible really sets you up, because it's just an extension of that, isn't it?
Yeah.
And one of the amazing things that I learned, and I'm thankful again to your predecessor at Dar es Salaam, who gave me this book when I toured there in 1986, and I read it cover to cover, and it is a fabulous read. So many things I learned about Judaism and Christianity from Islam that were fabulous, that we are considered people of the book. I have fun telling Jews that Christians and Jews we're all alike from Islam's perspective, and so much about Jesus and Mary and the whole roots of both faiths are captured in here so well, and so many wonderful things on how to run your life and what to do and why. Not just do this blindly, but what the benefits are. And so I'm very thankful for having had the opportunity to read this. So with that, welcome back.
Thank you.
Okay. So we have a tape that we're going to show that's about 13.5 minutes long on the program. And I wondered if you would set it up for us and tell us what we're going to see and what the importance of it is.
Yeah, the program came about as a result of the state laws in the United States. Every state has what they call the standards of learning. And teachers must cover certain things in the classroom. And it's very specific. In sixth grade, you do this. Seventh grade, you do that. And one of the problems within the American education system is that schools were mandated to teach about Islam, plus Buddhism and Hinduism, Christianity, Judaism. And one of the problems, of course, for the teachers is they're saying, well, here's this mandate saying I have to teach this. What do I know about it? If I didn't study it in college, how am I supposed to teach it at a high school level? So we put together this program. We have several programs at the mosque, but the Teachers Institute is specifically aimed at non-Muslims to bring them in, and the title of it is Understanding and Teaching About Islam. So we do Islamic faith, Islamic practice, the why behind a lot of that, and we bring them up into Abiquiu, so they're actually surrounded by Muslims, and they're living in a setting where they're watching us pray 5 times a day. They're watching us in terms of our diet. So all these things that we're teaching them about, we walk out of the classroom and they're watching us do it. So it's the only course on Islam in the United States that's actually taught within an Islamic setting, where 24 hours a day you're hearing the call to prayer, etc., and watching us walk the walk as well as talk the talk. And I think it's been very helpful, because a lot of the teachers have to deal in the classroom with their own prejudices as well as their students' prejudices. And some of the things, actually, to give you a good example, I'm glad you brought up the Ahli Kitab. The Jews and Christians are referred to as people of the book, Ahli Kitab. Well, a lot of times you'll see the media saying, well, Jews and Christians are referred to as hypocrites and non-believers. I'm going, no, hypocrites and non-believers are referred to as hypocrites and non-believers. Christians and Jews are Ahli Kitab, they're people of the book. And they have special reverence in the Quran. So they've got these kids bombarded with stuff in the media that is actually quite wrong. So when you're studying the subject of Islam, what you have to do is erase the slate before you can even start writing on it. And that's kind of difficult. So that's why we put the Teachers Institute together. So you might as well.
Well, what are the standards? So they have to. So across the country, how long ago was that they did that? The standards, yeah, the teachers, yeah.
That's been in effect for decades.
Okay, because I don't remember when I was a kid, you know.
Yeah, your teachers probably didn't pay so much attention to it.
But now
it's gotten stronger and more important and more critical in terms of what is taught.
What about the whole thing?
Getting into it is pretty new.
So what about the whole separation of church and state? But so this is under history. Where is it?
Social studies.
History, social studies at the high school level.
Junior high.
Junior high and high school.
Elementary. Actually, a lot of them start at the 6th grade.
Okay.
And what we do also, we meaning the people at Dar al-Islam and then other organizations that I've sort of tied into, one of the things we watch for as well is the wording on these state mandates. Because, for instance, the state of Virginia had in the 6th grade, social studies students will study the conflict between Christianity and Islam. And in 8th grade, they will return to the conflict between Christianity and Islam. And Susan Douglas and I, she's another Muslim that lives outside of Washington, D.C., we got so tired of that sort of commentary slipping into the school systems that we actually wrote a more than 300-page curriculum unit called Emergence of Renaissance. Then the subtitle of it is Intellectual Links Between the Islamic and the European World, because you can trace the scholarship of the Renaissance right back into the Islamic world and into China, into Africa, India, non-Muslim areas as well. But they sort of were filtered through the Islamic world, added upon, and then went right up into the Islamic world. So we're trying to get links. So Susan's one of our faculty members, actually, and she and I do lectures at the Teachers Institute saying, what are the links? You know, let's stop this what's the clash of civilization nonsense. And what are the links here? Our calendar is a good example. The Gregorian calendar is based on star charts that were developed by the Muslims. So
there's a whole history there that we won't be able to get to today, but we did want to give you a flavor of what goes on right here in northern New Mexico in Abiquiu at the mosque in this teacher training program. So if you will just sit back and be ready to watch, it's about 13.5 minutes. We'll come back and we'll talk some more about that, but I want to give you a flavor of what goes on right here in New Mexico in terms of teaching Islam. So if you'll roll that tape, we'll be back right afterwards. Thank you.
How will Islam manage in the 20th century and in the 21st century with regard to women?
But doesn't Islam condone terrorism?
How do men and women come together then?
Why should you be allowed to have 4 wives?
Exactly what does Islam say about the relationship between religion and politics?
How do we respond to people whose only concept of Islam is violence?
Americans still don't know about Islam. What they do know is usually incorrect or distorted and based on ignorance. The popular stereotype presented by the media and in educational institutions has a long history of bias. Islam has been treated as foreign, strange, violent, or against the very beliefs that Americans are taught to value. All too often, the only voice from the Muslims is the extreme one. The Teachers Institute presented at Dar al-Islam is an attempt to change all this. The Dar al-Islam Teachers Institutes are 2-week residential programs for secondary school teachers. They cover the faith, civilization, and worldview of Islam. Teachers study Quran and Hadith with top-notch academic and traditional scholars. They learn about resources to help them in teaching about Islam more effectively. The institutes give teachers a chance to see how Islam works in the daily life of Muslims and to better understand the basic tenets of the fastest-growing faith in the United States.
We create an environment where they can see not only knowledge unfolding in front of them from scholars that are very carefully chosen, but so they can also see Islam in action, so to say, with the mosque close by and the adhan being given and the prayers being read, and for them to have the opportunity to not only see those things, but to be present, and if they wish to participate.
The Hadith discussion we had yesterday was very valuable in terms of going through it. Very few people have an opportunity to go through those things in depth. And actually, they hear about it through press reports, they hear about it through word of mouth. But very few Americans have had the opportunity to actually study Quran and study Hadith. And to have PhDs with you to talk through it is a wonderful experience.
I was a little surprised at the level of academia, because normally you don't see it at this very, very high level. And it was initially a little bit intimidating. It took me a while to get used to the fact that these are very bright, articulate people. On the other hand, I respect the fact that obviously these people who run this institute wanted us to see the best, and were obviously trying to get a point across to us, which I think is invaluable, because we as educators then have the opportunity to go and spread the word. And I think they were basically saying we want correctness, we want real knowledge to get out there in the mainstream.
Well, my opinion, usually the high points of things like this are usually the people you come and meet, the people you spend time with, people whose point of view you get to appreciate and attach an idea or a philosophy or a feeling to a personality. So I think that's without a question the strongest part. I've had a very, very good experience going to prayer, talking to some experts. I love New Mexico. Is great. I have to say the setting itself was a big plus as well.
In choosing faculty, we look first for Muslims with strong academic or traditional credentials in Islam.
One of the key differences between Muslim and Christian theology is that Islam doesn't accept the idea of original sin. Infants are not born in some sinful state. They are born pure. They are made sinful by their circumstances as they grow up. So to carry out the shahada, to bear witness, is to testify to something that we knew as disembodied souls before we were breathed, as the Quran puts it, into the embryo in our mother's womb.
Faculty members must be able to relate to a variety of teachers in a setting very different from the usual academic one.
Informality is very useful, and there are some questions that at first they feel a little bit embarrassed about asking, or they think that they're going to be offensive to Muslim values if they ask that question. And as the ice breaks, which is relatively easy with Americans anyway, after a few days you've eaten with them, you've traveled with them, you've queued up in the bathroom with them and so forth, and you get to know them well enough for them really to explain to you what they really want to know about Islam and what are the problems that are going on in their minds, particularly those who come from a Christian perspective and have perhaps deeper theological questions, or things that relate to their own belief system and view of life that they're perhaps embarrassed to bring up in lectures. So I've had some very interesting private discussions with some of the students. It's been, I think, quite rewarding in that way.
But with the coming of Islam, Muslims were told that they should not bow. That is one of the reasons why the protocol, the royal protocols in the Middle East and in the ancient world was changed. Muslims will never go and bow before a king. They will never do it. No matter how poor and weak they are, they will never bow before anybody. That's why protocol, you go to some of these kings, no, Muslims will not do that. They will not bow. So, I mean, this is part of that radical monotheism and part of that radical spiritual individualism.
So the fasiq, the evildoer, is the one that splits the protective boundaries of the hudud. Now these are seen, the hudud of Allah, which are the sharia, the sacred law, these are seen as not simply arbitrary laws. Don't do this, don't do that. They are protective laws. From the Muslim perspective, these are laws designed to maintain integrity within the society. When the Quran says, "La taqrabu zina," do not go near fornication. Why? It says, because it's a fahisha, it's a perversion, wasa'a sabila, and it leads down a terrible road.
Extensive marketing, a great offer that includes meals, lodging, allowances for travel, books, the use of library and media facilities, and an excellent faculty attract the highest quality applicants. Institutes have included teachers with PhDs, heads of departments, and teachers with national awards for excellence. The Institute director is Karima Diane Alavi. She taught at the Sidwell Friends School in Washington, D.C., and has 18 years' experience in teaching, curriculum development, and educational administration. She also presents teacher training workshops at schools and conferences on teaching about Islam.
That's the thing that impresses me the most, is that these people are connecting off of this mountain. They're connecting elsewhere. And I'm seeing that develop more and more, and that's exciting.
Each teacher would reach hundreds of students a year, and then thousands over the lifetime of the remaining of their teaching career. And then each student has the family and the friends and so on.
It's often said that there are stereotypes about Muslims and that it's important to combat, remove those stereotypes. What important as fighting stereotypes is, I think it's much more important to provide positive information about Islam and Muslims, which will take care of stereotyping also. So to my mind, the greatest benefit of such seminars is that it not only removes negative images about Islam, it furnishes the participants with structured, systematic information about Islam and Muslims, and especially when they come and live with Muslims, they realize that Muslims are basically a good people, many of them devout individuals. They believe in their religion, and their religion teaches them good things.
My personal experience has been from two sides. On the one side, it's really driven home to me the necessity for the Muslim community, particularly those who see themselves in either a leadership or a scholarly type of position, to stay aware of what people are thinking. I mean, I've learned so much in terms of how people think about Islam, and therefore how we need to think about addressing the broader American audience, so that we answer the questions that they have as opposed to answering things that they're really not interested in or really not concerned about. That's been very, very important for me. And you know, we have people coming from all different parts of the country, various age groups, various religious backgrounds. As you know, we've even had some people who are not from, you know, the Abrahamic faith, people who are Buddhist or Confucianist or whatever. I think it's real important for us to have access to people who can really give us a sense of how do people out there think about Islam? What are the issues that we really do have to address in the broader American population? That's been real important to me.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم هل أتى على الإنسان حين من الدهر لم يكن شيئا مذكورا إنا خلقنا الإنسان من نطفة أمشاج نبتليه فجعلناه سميعا بصيرا إنا هديناه السبيل إما شاكرا وإما كفورا إنا نحن نزلنا عليك القرآن تنزيلا فاصبر لحكم ربك ولا تطع منهم آثما أو كفورا واذكر اسم ربك بكرة وأصيلا ومن الليل فاسجد له وسبحه ليلا طويلا إن هذه تذكرة فمن شاء اتخذ إلى ربه سبيلا وما تشاءون إلا أن يشاء الله إن الله كان عليما حكيما يدخل من يشاء في رحمته والظالمين أعد لهم عذابا أليما صدق الله العظيم.
Okay. Listen, that was a wonderful tape. It really gave me a little better understanding of what goes on up there. But I was curious, what was the man praying at the end?
He was reciting the Quran.
He was.
Yeah, and we use the word recite. We don't use the word read.
Aha.
Because there's very strict rules about the length of the vowel. The grammar, the Arabic grammar, is very difficult to learn. And by the way, the British man who was reciting at the end used to be a choir boy in an Anglican church in England. So he just has the voice of an angel. So teachers love, they have no idea what he's saying, but they just love to listen to him.
Well, my friend Ron Stacy, who told me about the program, raved about it. And so you've obviously, that's how you actually, through this program, you became a Muslim.
Well, yeah, again, though, but it was really
over 20 years.
Process.
20-year process, but it kind of
I think it was the getting away from the distractions and really thinking about it.
I love the way you characterize it, though, because you're not rejecting anything. You're moving through. It just gave you a better expression of what within yourself?
Well, actually, I'd have to say I became closer to Jesus and Mary through Islam. I mean, their reality became much closer to me through Islam than it had, and I don't know why. It could also be age. I mean, I'm older.
Right.
I'm comparing when I was a child in Cleveland going to Sunday school and age, but a lot of the saints, the Christian saints, the Christian stories suddenly became far more real when they started showing up in this book, and it just clicked.
Yeah. I can't say how much I enjoyed reading this book and how much it really gave me a completely different perspective of Islam. I mean, you cannot judge from the newspapers and the television about what's going on. There's so much value in here I can't begin to tell you, and it really built, you know, on the Bible. So in the few minutes we have left, what do you want the folks to know about Islam and about the teacher training program?
First of all, I was going to say about the Quran itself as well. I would suggest this one, which is written by, well, translated by Muhammad Assad, and it's called The Message of the Quran. And he is a he's a scholar, Jewish scholar who converted to Islam and is in a long line of rabbinical scholars. So he really does so much of this in here, even more in terms of his notes. So I like this one by Muhammad Assad.
And you had another book that you wanted to...
Yeah, there's if somebody doesn't want to go through something this big, Approaching the Quran, which is by Michael Sells. This one is a nice one as well.
Early Revelations.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
So it's a little bit shorter one.
And there will be, go to the website that we've left for you in the credits, and you can, one of them is the University of Georgia, which is a great website to learn more about Islam, not only here but around the world, and the other one has the website for
Dar al-Islam.
For ABQ. So
the other thing that was interesting about that tape is Suleiman Yang, one of the professors, was using the word radical twice. And he's African, so he has an accent there. And what he was he used the word radical monotheism. And one of the things I found really interesting that he was talking about was the issue of what we call sajda, which means prostration, to get down and bow. And he said after the coming of Islam, people refused to bow before a king because we're not permitted to worship anything other than God. And sajda, getting down on the ground with your face on the ground, is considered a form of worship and submission to the will of God. So he was talking about what he referred to as radical monotheism. And it's a good point that there are many gods. You know, the dollar bill can be your god.
Yeah.
You know, the greed, etc. There's plenty of things around here that we can sort of move into our lives as if it's some sort of a god or a deity. And he was saying once Islam arrives, that's it. The only thing you bow to is God. So
Yeah. So just in the couple minutes we have left, what else would you like people to go away and know? We didn't talk much about women in Islam. We'd hoped to talk about that and so much. So we've really just scratched the surface here. But my advice to you, if you're a teacher somewhere or if you're wondering what your kids are learning, even though they're mandated to learn about this, this is a great resource, and it's right here in northern New Mexico. Follow the credits, go to their website, recommend to your children or grandchildren's teachers to consider possibly applying for their program. It's a 2-week residential program. It's, I think it's a gift from the Dar es Salaam, isn't
yes,
it?
Yeah, it's all run through donations.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
even those who can't afford to come can come, and they can't afford not to come or to learn more about it. It's so important today to learn more about Islam. We cannot rely on the media to give us the full picture. We have to learn for ourselves, and it will help you even in your faith. If you're Jewish or Christian or any other faith, it's important now for all of us to become aware of all the religions in the world, and particularly Islam today, more important perhaps than ever because of the hostilities we're facing. Last word for you, Karima. What advice
Prayer.
would you have for people? Prayer.
Prayer. That was a thing that comes up over and over again in Islam, is punctuating the day with prayer. I mean, we stop, whatever we're doing, we stop 5 times a day because it's time to pray. And so if somebody is looking at their spiritual path, I would say the best thing to do is to focus on their own prayer and prayers with others and see where that leads them.
I think that's great. So thank you for coming in for both these. We hope this has been of some value to you. Please watch the credits, follow up on it, and use it as an example in your own spiritual life to pray 5 times a day, whether you're Islam, a member of Islam or not. So anyhow, thank you again for coming. We hope it's been of value to you. This is Bill O'Donnell for Spirituality TV. Thanks for viewing, and stay tuned next week at this time for another program on spirituality.